My aunt and uncle skipped my grandfather's funeral and blamed a non-refundable cruise deposit. I almost believed them. Then, while the organ was still playing, and my black coat still held the smell of candle wax, an old answering machine in his workshop clicked on by itself and started speaking in his voice. He had been buried 3 hours earlier. When I got there, my hands wouldn't stop shaking. The 2 folding chairs were the first thing I noticed when I walked into the funeral home. Front row, right side, empty. I had set a memorial card on each seat myself. Squaring the corners like that might will them into appearing. Carol and Denny Voss, my aunt and uncle, the 2 people my grandfather had trusted, with a spare key to his shop for 11 years. The room smelled like lilies and furniture polish. A ceiling fan turned slowly overhead. Every time the side door opened, I looked up, and every time it was someone else. Grandpa Ezra would have hated that I kept watching that door. He used to say, "A man's word is the only clock that never needs winding." He said it while doing something small that proved it, sitting through every one of my school recitals with sawdust still on his forearms, driving 40 minutes in a snowstorm because my car wouldn't start, teaching me to true a bent gear at his workbench when I was 9 years old, patient as still water. He never gave speeches about loyalty. He just showed up every single time, like it cost him nothing, even when I knew it cost him everything. When I was 10, my parents moved overseas for work and left me with him for what was supposed to be one summer. It became my whole childhood. He never once made me feel like a burden. He built me a second workbench right beside his, so I'd have somewhere that was only mine. So when his heart started failing, there was no question. I drove to the shop every evening after my shift, refilled his medication organizer, read his mail, sat with him while the old clocks ticked around us like a room full of patient hearts. Watching a steady man's hands begin to tremble was the hardest thing I have ever done. Then Carol came back into his life. She showed up with grocery bags and a voice gentle enough to fool anyone who hadn't grown up watching her disappear for years at a time. She said she wanted to help him get organized. Within 2 weeks, his bank mail was going to her house first. When I offered to help him sort his invoices, she smiled at me the way you'd smile at a child reaching for the stove. "Let his actual family handle this, Ren." I swallowed that sentence for him. Now her chair was empty at his funeral. The officiant was talking about hands that build lasting things when my phone buzzed in my coat pocket. I should have ignored it. Nobody checks their phone at a funeral, but grief makes you strange. It makes every small sound feel like it might be the last piece of something breaking loose. I tilted the screen just enough to see it. Carol had posted a photo. For half a second, I told myself it might be an old picture of Grandpa Ezra, some late clumsy tribute. Then it loaded. A cruise ship railing, turquoise water behind it, a fruity drink sweating in her hand. My Uncle Denny stood next to her, sunburned, grinning like he'd won something. The caption underneath, "Finally taking the trip we deserve." The timestamp sat beneath it like a slap. It had posted during the opening hymn. My thumb froze against the glass. Around me, the room kept breathing. Somebody's chair creaked. The officiant said Ezra had spent his whole life making broken things whole again. I stared down at my aunt and uncle, floating in blue water while the man who raised me lay in a closed casket 6 feet away. They hadn't missed the funeral because of a deposit. They had chosen a pool deck over a graveside. At the burial, wind kept lifting the edge of my memorial card while I stood there trying to pray, but all I could hear was that caption. Afterward, in the parking lot, neighbors hugged me and a woman from his church pressed a foil-covered dish into my hands. I thanked everyone. I did all the things a composed person is supposed to do. Then I got into my car, shut the door, and let that dish sit untouched in my lap. If a story like this has ever mattered to you, hit subscribe now, because what happened next in that workshop is something I still have trouble saying out loud. That was when my phone rang. Not a text, a call. The name on the screen made the back of my neck go cold. Workshop landline. That number hadn't rung in 3 days, not since the funeral home had come to collect him. I let it ring twice before I answered, and I heard nothing but static. Then a click, then his voice. "Ren, if you're hearing this, go to the shop tonight. Don't tell Carol." My grandfather had recorded that message onto his ancient answering machine weeks before he died, set to trigger the day after his burial. I didn't breathe again until I was in the car. The workshop's porch light was on when I pulled up, the one he always left burning when he knew I was coming. That detail undid me before I even reached the door. Inside, the shop smelled like machine oil, cedar, and the peppermints he kept by the register. Dozens of clocks ticked in uneven rhythm, the way they always had. For one cruel second, I expected to hear his footsteps from the back room. Instead, I found Nathaniel Cho sitting at the workbench. He'd been Ezra's apprentice for 6 years, the only person besides me who had a key. His tie was loose, his eyes red. An old cassette player sat in front of him. "I'm sorry, Ren," he said, standing too fast. "He made me promise I'd get you here alone. No Carol, no Denny, no cousins, just you." The shop hummed with the sound of 100 small gears. "He knew I'd come the second I heard his voice," I said. Nathaniel nodded. "He said you always came." Then he reached under the bench and lifted a wooden cigar box onto the counter. "I knew that box. Grandpa Ezra used to keep spare mainsprings in it." My name was carved crookedly into the lid. Not Carol's name. Not the family. Mine. I sat down because my legs suddenly felt unreliable. Inside were a leather ledger, a folder of bank statements, and a copy of a financial power of attorney with Carol's signature on it, dated 8 months earlier. My hands went numb. I opened the ledger first. Grandpa Ezra's handwriting started sharp and precise, the same steady script he used to mark measurements on brass plates. Page by page it weakened. The letters tilted. But the meaning never wavered. "Carol says the shop lost money this month. I don't remember losing any." Another entry. 600 gone from the register. "No repairs logged." Another. "She says my memory is going." It isn't. I pressed my hand flat against the page. The man I had buried that morning had spent his last strength, leaving me a trail of breadcrumbs. That night at my kitchen table, I laid it all out in rows. What Carol had claimed, what Ezra had written, what the bank statements actually showed. The numbers climbed slowly, then all at once. Small repair expenses, normal. Parts orders, normal. But large transfers, month after month, moving straight into an account under Carol's name. Never logged as payroll. Never logged as anything. By 1 a.m, the total sat in front of me like a verdict. Just over $310,000. I didn't call Carol. I called Priya Nandan, the elder law attorney whose card Nathaniel had slipped into the box. When she picked up, I said, "I think my aunt drained the shop that raised me." Priya was quiet for a beat, then said, "Don't confront her. Bring me everything. And from now on, you document, you don't argue." Stories like this one are exactly why this channel exists. If you want to see how the truth finally caught up with her in that courtroom, subscribe, because it gets worse before it gets fair. My aunt walked into the courthouse in a cream blazer and pearl earrings, like she was attending a luncheon. My uncle trailed behind her, eyes bouncing between the floor and the exit sign. Carol didn't look at me right away. She looked at the gallery first, checking who had come to watch. Her attorney opened gently. He said this family had suffered a painful loss. He said caregiving is messy, that any confusion around the shop's finances came from stress and informal arrangements between relatives. He made it sound almost noble. Then Priya stood. She didn't open with the money. She opened with the cruise. She placed a printed copy of Carol's photo on the evidence table. Turquoise water, sunburned smiles, the caption glowing under the judge's reading light. "Finally taking the trip we deserve." Priya pointed to the timestamp. This was posted during Ezra Voss's funeral service. Carol's chair squeaked as she shifted. Priya explained the workshop landline. Nathaniel's role, the cigar box, the recording Ezra had arranged before his death because he no longer trusted his own sister. With what he'd documented, Carol's face changed then. Not fear yet. Irritation, like her rehearsed story was slipping out of shape. Then came the ledger. Priya read 3 lines in Ezra's own words. "Carol says the shop lost money this month. I don't remember losing any. 600 gone from the register. No repairs logged. She says my memory is going. It isn't." Nobody in that room moved. Priya laid out the transfers month by month beside the legitimate expenses, until she reached the final number on the screen. $310,000. Carol's attorney stood again, faster this time, arguing that families reimburse each other informally, that Ezra had always intended to help his niece. The judge looked over his glasses. "Do you have receipts for any of these transfers?" Silence. "For any substantial amount, Your Honor? No." During the recess, Carol cornered me by the water fountain, her perfume the same sweet, sharp scent she'd worn the day she pushed me out of his finances. "Ren," she said, voice trembling on cue, "keep the shop. I'll pay some of it back quietly. We can still be family." I looked at her outstretched hand. The same hand that had shut a door on me now wanted to hand me the key like it was mercy. No, I said. Her face hardened instantly. Don't be stupid, Ren. He owed me. There it was. Back inside, Priya presented the final chart, Ezra's words on one side, the transfers on the other, the total glowing at the bottom. When the judge finally asked if I wanted to speak, I stood with the ledger in my hands. My grandfather didn't leave me this because he wanted me to get rich. He left it because he was afraid nobody would believe him. He raised me every day my parents couldn't, and while he was being buried, his own sister posted a photo saying she was finally living the life she deserved. Carol shot to her feet so fast her chair hit the railing. I earned that money. After everything I put up with, he owed me. Her attorney grabbed her sleeve. Too late. The judge's pen had already stopped moving. If you've ever had someone show their true colors the moment there was money on the table, you already know how this feels. Let me know in the comments and stick around, because what I did with that workshop afterward is the part that finally let me breathe again. The order arrived in a plain envelope weeks later. Carol was ordered to repay everything, removed from any control tied to Ezra's estate, and the matter was referred for a formal review of financial exploitation of an elder. Once investigators started asking questions, my Uncle Denny did exactly what I expected. He said he never looked at the accounts. He said Carol handled everything. The cruise, the one they had smiled through while my grandfather's casket was being lowered, quietly became entirely her idea in his retelling. My cousins stopped calling. One sent a message accusing me of airing family business. I didn't answer. Some doors don't need slamming. You simply stop holding them open. I went back to the shop on a quiet Sunday. My husband drove with one hand on the wheel and the other around mine. Our son sat in the back seat asking if great-grandpa. Ezra's shop still had the cuckoo clock with the chipped bird. It does, I told him, and my voice almost held. The shop looked tired when we arrived. The porch step warped, the sign faded. But the bones of it were still good, exactly the way Ezra would have said it. I climbed the steps and touched the rail he'd sanded smooth by hand. I brought a new bulb for the porch light Carol had once threatened to shut off on me. My son held the ladder while I twisted it into place, and when the light flooded warm and yellow over the porch, he clapped like it was a magic trick. I didn't keep the shop for myself. I signed it over to a non-profit that trains young people from unstable homes in trade skills, clockmaking, small repair, the kind of patient work that teaches a person their hands are worth something. The recovered money became a scholarship fund in Ezra's name. It now pays for tools, tuition, and sometimes just bus fare, so a teenager can get to their first day of training. Before we left, I took my son into the little back room where Ezra used to let me watch him work. He reached up and touched an old brass gear sitting on the shelf. Was this his? He asked. I nodded. Did he teach you everything? I looked back through the doorway at the porch light glowing against the evening. He taught me the only thing that ever mattered, I said. That showing up is the whole job. I used to think family meant the people who shared your last name. My grandfather taught me otherwise. Family is the person who leaves the porch. Light on before you've even said, "You're coming." It's the hand steady on your shoulder while everyone else is looking at their phone. Carol wanted me to believe that blood gave her the right to take. To lie, to disappear, and still be called family. It doesn't. A last name is not loyalty. A caption on a beach photo is not grief. And showing up after the money runs out is not the same as showing up when someone is dying and needs you. I don't save chairs for people who've already told me, in the truest way they know how, that they were never planning to sit in them. If you've ever had to protect someone from the very family that should have protected them, you're not alone. Tell me your story in the comments below. And if this kept you watching until the very end, hit subscribe, because there are more stories like this one still to come.